The things that I love about anything that I do is A, is it difficult enough to want to pursue? That's not something that you can do in a quick snap. And you may be clear in your mind, but it's the people around you that often pull you down or, lift you up. If you don't have a bad night, you will never know how much better you can be the next night. It helped me deal with being a woman director. I think it's a very political thing. Audiences are very important for everybody. And I think being a comedian helps me mentally, I say it's free therapy. And you have to try the room. I always say that it really depends on the room you have, and that's never the same room. Everybody's a Twitter champion, everybody's an Instagram war hero, like everybody wants to comment on hundreds of things. I think it's the adventure of a lifetime because there's so much to laugh about and cry about and bang your head on the. I feel like laughter is the best medicine. I don't believe in the quick headline. I'm not in it to win it. I'm in it to appreciate it. I'm very sure that whatever you do for whatever period of time requires your entire focus and attention. At least that's how I've succeeded at anything at all that I've done. Even if it is writing one page or earning an honest day's wage. So I think but of all the things, I think what there's a similar thread in everything that I've pursued, which is that you have to love reading and writing, and possibly of course, with sport and comedy, you have to love movement. It's something where you cannot be completely in your head all the time. There is an element of living in your body, when it comes to sport and comedy. There are performative aspects in both that are very similar if you read about the science of why an athlete might want to become a comedian. But I think that the things that I love about anything that I do is A, is it difficult enough to want to pursue? That's always the first thing I ask myself, because if it is something that I can do easily or it comes very naturally to me, then it's not so interesting. And the second thing is, does it respect the phase of life I'm in? Because I think that it's very easy to just paint another sort of overall picture. I think people are very fond of abstracts, because it helps you classify things in broad strokes. But whatever I do has to fit into that phase of life that I am in, or the things that I love, and obviously when it comes to the present phase of life, I'm a mom of two kids, and I feel like uh, nothing else really has that priority. It has to begin and end with whether that is fulfilled and true, and whether my husband and I are able to sort of be true to our duties as parents. It starts there, and if all that is fine and yes, then everything else falls in place. And there are many things that I dislike. One is obviously these broad strokes paintings of women being able to do everything. Um, but I think overall there isn't too much to dislike. I mean, you just have to love working, and I think that. But you also have to put work in its place. That's something I've grown to dislike over time, which is that in the kind of connected world we live in, that can often be very difficult. Even if you're mindful, it's very difficult to motivate to the other person why you need to make work and play, and private time or whatever. Like those kinds of delineations are not very clear, and you may be clear in your mind, but it's the people around you that often pull you down or lift you up. So because nothing that I do anymore is individual, right? Sport was very individual, writing is very individual. You lock yourself in a room and you write. But making films or doing comedy is extremely dependent on a network of people coming together. You have a lot of producers, creative people that come together. And somehow, I think finding that rhythm on a set or in a comedy show with the people that are behind the scenes, I'm not talking about the audience. Of course, the audience is a completely different game in the comedy bit. But I think those are the parts that are, I wouldn't say I dislike them, but I do think they're very challenging. Being shut down during the pandemic was very frustrating because I was an independent filmmaker. I had just done a lot of career courses at film school, but I did not have the insurance that film students had. I did not have the things to take for granted, like people coming together safely or the equipment or whatever else. And I feel like that frustration made it, lent itself to wanting to explore something new, right? Where I could validate myself because writing and film inherently have a very long life cycle. You can make even a short film. You make a film that you've shot in a day, You still have to edit it, you have to color it, you have to think about whether you like the story you're telling. Have you missed anything? Will the actor come back? Do you need a soundtrack? So, a film is very intricate, as is a book. A book is not something that I mean, unless you're Jack Kerouac and writing in one long sentence, it's not something that you can do in a quick snap. It goes through several edits. And I think in writing my memoir, I definitely understood the beauty of time, because the more you distance yourself from the thing that you're writing about, it takes on so many new dimensions that you may not have otherwise considered. And so, because these two things are so, it's like a patchwork quilt. You have to go through a lot to get there, to get to the finish line. Comedy, on the other hand, is very quick. It's very instant gratification. It's like Maggie noodles. You're either good or you're terrible, and immediately, right? So either the audience is with you and laughing, or they're like, whatever. So I think that is what made me want to try comedy. Because I needed some kind of validation for all the things I'd written during the pandemic, for example. And the other thing that I discovered in doing more comedy is that it helped me deal with being a woman director. I think it's a very political thing. I don't think it's as easy as it is made out to be. Everybody's all about women empowerment and all that, but we all know how much rhetoric and how much practice that is, right? And being a comedian definitely helps me live in the theater that I was born and raised to be in, right? I'm someone who's very direct. I've always spoken my mind. I've never been penalized for it because I'm South Indian, right? I haven't faced that kind of misogyny from a large part of my life, and I think that, so those are very difficult truths to grapple with once you step out of your nice, cozy Bangalore home. Even if you venture as far as North India or, later out into the world, you see a very different set of rules that you grapple with, make peace with. And I think being a comedian helps me mentally, to I say it's free therapy. The first show that I wrote, the first hour that I wrote was very organic, right? It became a culmination of 5 minute, 10 minute sets that I had written through a period of probably 8 or 9 months, right? I wrote the material for 9 months. I tested it and it came together as a show because it was something that was very deep and personal, as all most good writing is, right? And how do I construct a set? Obviously, you have these ideas, right? And then you try them. You say, okay, what if I took this drift on it? What if I took that drift on it? Okay, this didn't work with this audience. That might work with an Indian audience. This might work with a British audience. You have to try the room. I always say that it really depends on the room you have, and that's never the same room, right? And for example, you can make some jokes in the vernacular when you're gigging in India that you cannot land if you're, say, performing in the UK or the US. Um, but my writing of sets is very organic. I read the news, or I think about, what's bothering me today. Is it modern medicine as it deals with my aging family or my young family or myself? What is it? What is the topic of the day, right? And if I can have a funny take on it, then I write it down. Of course, I feel like laughter is the best medicine, because I don't think getting too serious about anything really changes anything. I think we overestimate our agency based on social media. Everybody's a Twitter champion. Everybody's an Instagram war hero. Like everybody wants to comment on hundreds of things. Because they feel like they're moving public opinion, which is all fine and dandy. You do what you need to do. You do you. But I also think that there's a very interesting article in Psychology Today or something that talked about the relative agency we have when we think about social media. How shrill is it to live as an adult today? It's a very shrill world. You have so much noise. And I think that instead of being an armchair expert on everything that I don't know anything about, I think comedy is quite visceral. It's like, is this funny? I mean, do you find this funny? If it's funny, if it's making you laugh, if it's giving me a belly laugh, then why not? Do I try stuff with my family? Absolutely. I try stuff with my kids because they're very honest. They don't bullshit. It's like you're either good or you're bad. Again, you'll know very immediately. And I also think that playing to children has a of course, you cannot play every material to a child. I'm just talking about very select things. The gags you try with kids and they succeed, they are gold. Like those are things that I feel like, because a lot of the audience that comes to comedy shows, if it's not a very late night show, definitely is there because they want to be entertained, and they want to be alleviated from whatever circumstance they're walking into the room with. So I feel Yeah, I have lots of nieces and nephews too, and a big extended family, all ages of children and young adults. So I think, especially my first show in India, I sort of sent out a blanket invite to all my nieces and nephews. I said, you have to come, you have to tell me what really works, what is really shit. And so that those kinds of little bits absolutely help, because they're my family. They will, it's very direct feedback, right? There's no layers of abstraction or filtering. So to answer you, yes, but not all the time, obviously, because we travel and we are not all together all the time. But yes and no. I think, again, as I said, I know how to put work in its place, right? At the end of the day, anything you do, whether it's art or science or engineering or reporting or journalism, whatever it is, I think you know um, you have to figure out what feeds you and how it feeds you. And I think I don't take myself too seriously as anything, actually. All the labels you've mentioned are just passing terms, because I know, we all have an end point, and we're gone one day, right? So to take yourself too seriously is kind of for me, it's a wasted effort, I feel, because you could be doing so many other things with your time. So, um, but what really does appeal to me about comedy is, as I said, it's a way to cope. It's if you look at our life, our collective lived experience in the last 3 to 4 years, the pandemic, then all the the wars that are happening around the world, uh, the suffering, just the suffering, even if there was no war, just the collective human suffering. We all saw how many people didn't have food and a means to work, during the pandemic. We all saw the migration of those people on foot in India, right? And then we saw the migration of people displaced by whatever world circumstances as well. So this is all suffering that is collective, right? And I feel like, um, when put in perspective, and when you can make light of it, then why not? I think, so it's not only about making films or helping me cope with that. I do think that comedians are very generous too. That's the other thing that I know to be true of my community, is that they can be very generous and very all embracing, which is not true of film. So I feel like there is a uh, I do it for the little wins. I do it for the little wins. I love meeting up and coming comedians, who are like me, who are very hungry. And I'm only a comedian for about 2 years now, 2 years and 3 months or something like that. So for me, I'm extremely hungry, and I feel like, and when you really peel the layers back, you will see why people that do comedy. It's either it's not always about the instant gratification. It's also a way to sort of make sense with the world, like a writer does. Like writers, we write things down, and then we process, right? We say, this is how I felt in this instant, but 3 days later, this is the layer on it. So comedy is nothing, it's nothing very different from any artist processing what they make of life. So if audiences are very important for everybody, because I think, if you don't have a bad night, you will never know how much better you can be the next night. And I think it's a grade. So I'm someone who loves light as well. So you have to have all shades. So I think they're a godsend sometimes, but in small doses. Yeah, yeah. While I know I'm good enough to do the Ultraman and have done it in all flying colors, I think the Ironman is a more interesting race, because it's a 1 day race, right? And it's something where you have to really understand the race from both the front and the back. There have been times where I've, uh, for example, the Ironman that I did right after Ultraman, within 3 weeks, right? I hung out at the back because obviously my body was shattered, right? But you also see the better stories towards the back. You see those people that will never give up. You'll see those people who will finish after the race clock has ended. And those are the stories that really inspire someone like me, because I don't believe in the quick headline. I'm not in it to win it. I'm in it to appreciate it. And so, yeah, I think it's the Ironman. I think it's the toughest day you can have, really.